KTN News.
A very good evening and welcome to Kivumbi 2022. This is the Standard Group Integrated Newsroom. In here we have all desks. We have digital, we have the TV desk, we have the verifying, the research desk, we have the editorial, all of us sitting in one room. And this is exactly where all the stories you watch on television, you read in the newspapers, or you read online are always done. And these are a team of our reporters currently working on several stories that you will be watching at the top of the hour and you'll be reading in the next coming minutes or even by tomorrow morning. A very good evening and welcome to Kivumbi 2022 once again. And tonight, like every other night, we have exciting topics for you. And in about 9 months, you will be going back to the ballot to pick your next leaders who will be at the helm of the country for a 5-year term. Now, this civic duty is very important as the leaders that are produced within that process. But it's also as controversial as every other political issue in this country. Now, this particular involves election disputes. Losers often claim plots to rig. They also say it's been rigged, leading to flawed outcome of the election. Now, the 2010 Constitution and the subsequent enabling laws demand the transmission of the results be done electronically. However, there are sticky issues. Lack of network, for example, the network coverage, failing equipment, and of course the staff are blamed for being complacent. Can this be mitigated? We will be speaking to Maheri Zaja, former Vice Chairperson IEBC. She knows one or two things about election technology and how it applies to our election right here in the country. My name is Ken Mijungu, and also tonight, I'm on the data. I'll be telling you shortly what we have for you. But first, let's cross over to my colleague, Akiso Wandera.
Certainly, quite a show lined up as we continue here with Kivumbi 2022. And the mitigation will depend on the implementation of the already existing laws. It is said that Kenya is a very litigious country that is also very active in the enactment of new laws. But the absence of laws is not our problem. We actually have enough legislation to address every situation we find ourselves in. There are 5 laws minus the Constitution applied in the management of elections, yet every general election, most are abused, misused or disused. Majority of the instances, shortcuts are made, eventually ending up in the Supreme Court or the Constitutional Court. Will 2022 be any different? Will we see unfettered commitment from political parties and the players? How do we seal the loopholes and perhaps brighten the grey areas? Tonight we speak to Willis Otieno, who's a constitutional lawyer with vast experience in election management across the region. Joshua Kipto will also be joining us on the round table. He's a lawyer and the Speaker of the Nandi County Assembly. We'll also be speaking to Alphonse Shindu, who is the country director at Africa Check. So do join us for that roundtable discussion at 10 p.m. And of course, I'll be coming in at 9 p.m. to bring you the day's news here on Kivumbi 2022. Right, let's begin with a report to just set the stage for the next 3 hours of Kivumbi 2022. As the 2022 polls draw closer, all eyes are on the Chebukati-led team as the Commission works on how to restore public confidence in the results. With the appointment of a data commissioner, Kenyans are hoping that electoral data will be transparent and IEBC will crown it by transmitting the results in a process that is free and fair, as well as credible and, most importantly, verifiable. Grace Ganga with that.
So help me God.
November last year, President Uhuru Kenyatta nominated Electoral Agency official Immaculate Kasait for the appointment to the position of Data Protection Commissioner as the county gears up for next year's polls. The move, which was necessitated by the 2017 polls which were nullified, will give the Commission powers to investigate data breaches in the electoral process. Mrs. Kasait will work hand in hand with Chebukati since she will be on the lookout for any suspicious activity during the electoral data collection. During the August 2017 polls, the Supreme Court nullified the presidential elections, rendering them invalid, null and void. In the ruling, the then Chief Justice David Maraga pointed that the Commission had committed irregularities in the transmission of results. This, even as the Chebukati-led Commission is moving towards rectifying the blunders that led to the nullification of the election. Former IEBC Vice Chair Lilian Mahiri says as the Commission works towards restoring trust, they should focus on leadership and increase its engagement and communication in order to help the country to make critical decisions to secure the credibility of next year's polls.
The public needs to be informed all the time of what is going on, because anything small will really bring in unnecessary suspicion. I recall there were issues of procurement. When you have late procurement of strategic materials for the electoral process, then that means the materials will come in late, there won't be adequate training for the officers, and again, remember that pressure that is put on the Commission is not good at all.
Remember that in 2007, the reason why the violence began was because of lack of proper communication. 3 days before the election results were announced, there was already anxiety and violence had already erupted in some areas, because the question was, why are they taking too long?
During the launch of the annual Voter Education Week, Chebukati said in a move to win back the confidence of the public, the Commission will, among others, grant access to presidential candidates, agents and observers to the results transmission server to ensure results announced at polling stations are accurate and verifiable. But what are the gains of having open servers?
The server being open might not be for the layman, that is you and me. In terms of what maybe Chebukati might mean by opening the servers this time around is that they might give professionals access to the server logs and access to the data and verifying the data integrity in actually those servers. So it's an advantage in terms of every candidate can actually look at the real logs of what is happening in the server.
With the scare of 224 polling stations unable to transmit results electronically, Mbiu says there are other ways that the government can use to ensure the same during the same period.
The impact, of course, is delayed results. The integrity of results is also compromised. CAK can actually help to set up masts that are multi-vendor in terms of it might allow different telcos to use the same masts. Also on the day of the poll can mobilize mobile access points.
Confirm.
But as 2022 inches closer, all eyes will be on Chebukati to see whether this time he will keep his word and assimilate all the electoral data as the country puts the poll data integrity to test. For Kivumbi 2022, I'm Grace Nganga.
All right, good way to set the stage for our conversation tonight. Data, online, and the election. Here is where we begin tonight. Mahiri Zaj, the former vice chairperson of the IEBC, is already seated. We'll be speaking to her shortly. But first, I'm the man on the data tonight. Let's take a look at where we start tonight, because this also sets the stage for our conversation. And where to start tonight is definitely the laws that establish our electoral system. Now, there are about 5 laws, including the Constitution, which is the supreme law. So which are these laws that we use in the election? The Elections Act 2011, the Election Laws Amendment Act of 2016, Election Offences Act of 2016, and of course the Political Parties Act of 2011. All these laws are applicable, and of course still the laws, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Act, IEBC Act of 2011, and the supreme law establishing this is the Constitution of Kenya 2010, the current constitution that we are using, that there were attempts to amend. After speaking about the laws, we need to establish the electoral technology that is used in our elections. I'll be defining a few of them. The biometric voter registration, BVR, that's where you put your fingers to register as a voter. It's usually applied prior to the voting day, and they closed it about 2 weeks ago. Electronic voter identification system used during the balloting or the voting day. And of course, there's electronic transmission of results for transmitting the results after the election from the polling station. And mostly this is a presidential election that goes to the National Tallying Center at the Bomas of Kenya for collation. Away from that, There is the Kenya Integrated Elections Management System. That is a KM system. The whole operating system of this is online publication of the register of voters as demanded, publishing of polling results, forms of the presidential election on an online platform for the public. Very important indeed. That's a requirement under the 5 laws plus the constitution that I mentioned earlier. So having established that, let's go to the most controversial election of our time, the 2017 general election. This is an election that was nullified as neither transparent or verifiable. There were a lot of things that the court said. I'm going to be reading a few. The IBC failed to transmit results electronically from all the polling stations to the National Tallying Center. That was the first thing that the court said. Let's take a look at the second thing. The court said that the IBC had used results forms from questionable authenticity. They couldn't be authenticated, and IBC was criticized also for failing to grant sufficient access to the servers. You remember that? The servers are in France, and France is still asleep, as the Supreme Court was told, and we are unable to get the results. So that's something that we are putting into perspective tonight, the election technology, and the fact that now the government is talking about bringing the servers locally. We'll be talking about that technology, but that's not all. There must be reasons why there was a dispute. Why election transmission? Now, there were claims of rigging, lack of trust in the polling commission. This is the reason why they needed the results to be transmitted electronically. And before then, before they got to that point, there must have been an obvious reason why there was that need. That need arose as a result of the 2007-2008 general election. That was disputed. So many Kenyans died. Now, there was a Kriegler Commission. Johan Kriegler is South African. He established, this commission was established in early 2008 following the chaotic 2007 general election. It made several recommendations after that. You'll find out among the recommendations there are to do with electronic transmission and the management of our elections. So the other recommendation was ECK, the defunct ECK at that time, was to develop an integrated and secure tallying and data transmission system to aid in that, to ensure that there was integrity of the election. The other recommendation system to allow computerized data entry and tallying at constituency level, secure simultaneous transmission of the same results, and allow ample time for verification of provisional results so that they are declared as final at the National Tallying Center. And there was a case, the Maina Kiai case. We'll be telling you when we sit on the table later about the Maina Kiai case. But that's not all. The Interim Independent Electoral Commission, that's IEC, and the results management system. Let's take you a little bit back before we go to the other issues. Now, the commission, this was established following the troubled 2007 general election. One of the mandates was to develop a modern system for collation, for collecting first, then collation, transmission, and of course tallying of all the electoral data. Now, this stemmed from the 2007-2008 disputed general election. It still applies. The technology has changed, but this is what is being used from IEC. And the features of the results management system. What are some of the features? Traditional vote counting process at the polling stations, yes, where it's counted manually by the polling clerk or polling attendants, polling station attendants. Then completion of forms containing those results signed by the political party agents. There's that requirement. Mobile phones running a special application for the electronic submission of provisional results. Remember, these results remain provisional until declared as final by the IEBC. And the other pictures are movement of official results on paper forms to the constituency tallying center. So once they've been counted, they have to be moved to the constituency tallying center, which is the final for presidential election. Software at the constituency tallying center was to accept data entry of official results from the paper forms, Form 36A. Whichever those forms they were talking about. Software at the National Tallying Center was to accept only data entry of official results provided by the constituency returning officer. That was another feature of the management system. And of course, there was the reconciliation of official and provisional results at the constituency tallying center and the National Tallying Center. That will form the basis of announcing the final results and reporting and output of provisional and official results from dissemination. Also very important feature of that. So away from that, let's talk about the 2010 Constitution, away from Kriegler. What the 2010 Constitution says about our election. It established the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission first, and under Article 88, it mandates the IBC to make use of appropriate technology and approaches in the performance of its core functions. We're talking about those functions. There are several laws that take care of that, and this is still about the result transmission. The Kenyan Electoral Regulation provide for the electronic transmission or provisional results. Now, the law explicitly states that the results transmitted electronically are only provisional results. I mean, that's very as controversial as it states, but it is what it is. The use of GSM cell phones with basic data transmission and software capabilities and results entered into applications on the handset and then transmitted electronically. As controversial as it was, that is the law. And paper forms posted at the public entrance of a building, so for example, a classroom, and then the polling stations for public consumption and verification. They counted 50 votes this side. Is it the same thing that is reflected on the paper that is by the door? And results at the polling station was to be shared with party and candidate agents, and of course with the election observers if they were at that polling station. And provisional results made public without delay by IBC for media and of course for the internet. How many times does this happen? It doesn't happen. I mean, it's usually provisional. We'll find out why. As the results are validated, official results, declaration of winners is and must be broadcasted, and it should be available online for all and Sunday for all of you to see. Of course, there are 6 elective positions in the country. We begin with the President, National Assembly, Senate, County Governor, National Assembly, that's the County Women Rep, and County Assembly Ward Representatives, who are the AMCA. And away from that, let's take a look briefly at the challenges facing the election in these 6 positions, or on those 6 positions that we have stated. There were hacking claims, system breakdowns, as often phones were configured and given polling stations logistical challenge because they were configured for particular polling station. Now, those are some of the things that they seek to move away from the hacking claims and all this. The other one, system breakdown and the configurations of the phones that lacked flexibility. So if they were meant for that polling station, they were definitely only for that polling station. You couldn't transmit anywhere else, of course, for logistical and security reasons. And still challenges application on the handsets must have been customized for each election, and not every polling station had mobile phone network coverage. Already they're saying right now that not all polling stations will have mobile phone coverage network. So it's something that is dicey, that needs to be looked at ahead of the 2022 general election. And the 2013 challenges were not so much. The system relaying the result via the official IBC website experienced a technical issue that slowed down the results. If you can remember, it took about 24 hours to resolve that delay in 2013, which was a huge challenge. There was a huge outcry regarding that delay. And the legal framework creating this is Article 81 all the way to Article 86 of the Constitution. And the Constitution establishes the principle of free and fair election, all the way 81 to Article 86 of the Constitution. And finally, the system must be simple, accurate, verifiable, secure, accountable, and of course, transparent. I mean, there's so many things we can say about our electoral system and the number of laws that we have that are governing the elections in the country. Now, this is very interesting because Kenyans continue to go to court to challenge the outcomes of this election every so often, apart from the fact that we have 5 other legislations that support the Constitution in the election. It's still not acceptable that Kenyans have to go to court all the time and challenge election results based on trust. And Mahiri Zaja now joins me right here on the round table for the first time on the table.
Thank you.
And she has managed elections. She was the vice chairperson of the IBC. A good place to begin our conversation is 2022 is coming, and definitely the candidates are preparing. And one of the things that we have heard from some of the candidates is 2022 could they could be setting up 2022 for rigging. Have you heard the claims from the political players that 2022, with the support that we see the government officials, the CSS giving one side, they could be setting it up for failure? I mean, out of everything that we have done to ensure election integrity, there are such claims. Have you heard the claims?
Of course I've heard, and it's not a new claim.
Yes, it's not a new claim, but the fact that it's coming up once again, 9 months to the election.
Yeah, it's quite disappointing because this usually comes from the political players. And we usually say that it's best for the political players to engage with the EMB, the electoral management body, so that they can walk through the processes or the process of elections together. And right now, IEBC already launched their EOP. They launched it in June this year. They already have the election operation plan in place. And remember, they must adhere to the administrative as well as the legal or statutory timelines. So for political players, it would have, or it would be more meaningful for them to engage every step of the way. Like now, the recent voter registration process, they should engage with the commission so that they know exactly what the commission is doing, what strategies are in place, and any questions they may have, they can ask the commission instead of casting aspersions.
Way ahead.
Yes, way ahead. Instead of casting aspersions on their, you know, on their work. Otherwise, it brings in the same old story of mistrust in the electoral process. And at the end of the day, you want a good process, a free and fair election, and yet you cannot trust the body that is charged with managing elections.
The mistrust stems from the fact that the IEBC has credibility issues in the face of not only the political players, but also the voters. The fact that the elections in Kenya is always a hot topic. It's always a do or die for the politicians. That mistrust is not only with the IEBC, but even the politicians among themselves. Before I even go to the digital space and try and look at how to secure it, is this something in your mind that can be dealt with, or is purely perceptional that these guys cannot be trusted? The interference is unreal. It's just things that exist in the head, because look at, not all the players are claiming plots to rig, to influence the election.
It's sad that it always comes. This question about mistrust always comes. And remember, we as the people of Kenya have given our constitutional officers the mandate to execute their responsibilities. And we expect that they shall be accountable to the people of Kenya to that extent that they must operate within the law and within the confines of the Constitution. So it is quite disheartening that people will start with all these notions of they don't trust the electoral body, yet this is the only body that is mandated to conduct elections under the law. This has not been a strange thing anyway. It has happened previously. It keeps recurring.
It's likely to happen?
It is likely to happen. And unfortunately, it is only with respect to the presidential election. Remember that we have all these other positions that people are vying for. So many candidates will be standing for elections. But the most contested and the hot spot is up there, the presidential election. And this is because of the way we have always treated the presidency in our country, that if you have the presidency, you have everything. And we still have a highly regarded presidency, a highly regarded executive, and this is why the contest is always fierce, and you find that there's all this likelihood of chaos erupting, incitement, propaganda. And this time, again, it's going to be very tough because now social media has gone another notch higher. People are going to use social media in a big way that we've not seen before. So I think we need to start thinking, even as a society, where do we want to grow our democracy towards? Because when we started with manual, the debes. You can look at that history, and you've gone through some of the things that the Commission has done. in terms of embracing technology. All that has not helped. So even if we bring in all these issues, you've had the ballot paper has several, in fact about 8 or 9 security features.
More than the currency.
More than the currency. Why is this so? And yet we are still saying IEBC has credibility issues. Why? Why do you ask that question?
Even away from the IEBC, the fact that the ECK, not the ECK, the Communications Authority, has already stated that about 27 polling stations are not likely to be well covered by the mobile phone network. I mean, it's 9 months to the election. We can take
27,
satellite.
maybe more, 240 or something.
We could take satellites, phones to those areas. I mean, what are you telling Kenyans? That's where that question of credibility comes in.
So you see, it's not a question of credibility on the IEBC.
Yeah.
IEBC must act in conjunction with other agencies, with other institutions. Communication Authority, as you've said, is one of them. Safaricom and the network providers are also in the mix, because remember, the IEBC has come out to say not all polling stations have the 4G network coverage. So they're still in consultations with the network providers to see to it that some of those areas are covered. And I've mentioned before that it's not even just far-flung areas. There are areas even within a few kilometers from Nairobi, the Kajiado areas. There are some areas in Kajiado which have
exactly.
They have that challenge. Homa Bay is another one. Those islands, you know, where there's even a challenge of transport. They also have their network challenges. Lamu is another place which is far-flung and with network challenges. Not to mention Turkana and many others in northeastern.
I mean, if we know it by now, and there's technology that can ensure this transmission of results from those places, if we know it this early, there must be something that can be done to restore that trust and credibility. I mean, in a country that we've had mobile phone network for the last 20 years, it's unheard of. A Kenyan who's watching a voter in those areas that you have mentioned, in Takawiri, in Migingo, they say we must be covered by now. There must be a way of doing it. I mean, how do you restore that credibility? Because the law states that we will vote manually, but it will be transmitted electronically. They must do something about it.
I think something has to be done, and so we are hoping IEBC, working with the Communication Authority and all these other players, the network providers, they'll just have to find a solution. Otherwise, it's not even just the voting itself that will be a problem, because remember, when you go to the polling station, you must be identified, first of all.
So
there's the EVID, the KIMS kit now. They identify you electronically, then you cast the ballots. Then after that, the results start being transmitted. So if there is an issue with the network coverage, then we are going to have a big problem. And yeah, it is true, we must demand that this be done. At least we cannot probably expect 100% accuracy or success, but at least let's have some good result when it comes to the transmission process.
You mentioned something about the social media and the part that social media will play in the next election. Already we have seen the by-election as a test run, how the social media has been used. It's being used, but it's also being manipulated to feed in information. So my question tonight would be, that space that has opened up, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing in terms of the availability of this space that previously was never here?
Definitely a good thing, because that's a sign that we are now a society that is able to use technology to make things easy, to bring transparency, to get information. But remember, we have an example of what happened in the US, the use of technology and the abuse of technology. Misinformation, disinformation, fake news were trending everywhere. And when it came to the 6th of January, the inaugural ceremony for Joe Biden, their president.
What they call insurrection in the capital.
Insurrection. There was, that insurrection. We thought that, you know, it was going to be hard. All these people who are involved, sending emails, I don't know what, on social media, photoshops, we thought it was going to be nearly impossible to get some of, you know, even the kingpins in that incidents. But right now, they're still prosecuting the people who are involved.
In fact, Steve Bannon is supposed to be picked today.
Imagine, up to now. Now they're going for even the big ones now. So you can imagine, and even their own president was even accused of having been the big propagandists of fake news, and even inciting the people to go home, but in a veiled way, telling them, you know, what to do. So we have to be very careful, because in a way it's a good thing. But remember, my rights end where yours begin. This is what I've even said. And I've read the Constitution in the Swahili segment, that Article 33 clearly gives us our freedom of expression.
Yes.
And we have the right to seek and receive important information or ideas. We have the right to freedom of artistic creativity, even scientific research. But those rights do not extend to propaganda for war. And for war now, this would even mean civil disobedience at the level we are seeing that is happening. People inciting, incitement.
I'll ask you to hold your
violence.
We need to take a short break. When we come back, we'll begin right there, Article 34, and also look at Article 35, the right to information also.
This is 33,
Yeah, 33, 33 and 35. Very important. 34 is for the media. Yes, so let's take a break on Kivumbi 2022. We still have a lot to discuss with Mahiri, but first, let's take a break. We'll be back in a moment.